Disc golf flight numbers, speed, glide, turn, fade. What do these numbers on the disc represent? How do they change the performance of the disc? What can they do for you? And is one of those numbers just a tiny little bit misleading? I'll get into all of that today, but first make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I highly appreciate it, and I look forward to everybody checking out my fantastically mediocre disc golf skills. With that being said, let's dig in. So what exactly do flight numbers mean? Like I said, you've got your speed, you got your glide, you got your turn, and you got your fade. There are 4 numbers on these discs. What they basically are, in a nutshell, is a flight rating system. It's based on just informing you, the disc golf player, on how this disc is supposed to function. And that's where the misleading number comes in that I spoke about earlier. This is the speed number. It's not exactly the speed of the disc. When you see a disc and you see that 15 speed on here, you think, wow, that disc can fly. Well, no, not necessarily. What that means is this is how fast the disc needs to be traveling in order to bring out the glide, the turn, and the fade capabilities of the disc. So if you've got a 13 speed, 5 glide, -1 fade, or -1 turn, 2 fade, in order to get those numbers, you're going to have to hit that speed mark with that disc. All right, now that you understand speed, we'll move on to glide. Glide is basically how well the disc stays up. A 5 glide disc is going to stay up in the air a little longer than a 3 glide disc. It makes the biggest difference to me when putting, especially long distances. The 5 glide putters or 4 glide putters are going to stay up in the air a little bit longer than your 3 glide putters, like the Harp, or a disc along those lines with heavy fades, lower glides that are designed for sort of a mid-range putting type disc. So glide is all about keeping that disc up in the air. Turn is, let's say you're a right-hand backhand thrower like I am, and when I launch that disc, the disc turn number dictates how much to the right that disc wants to go before it gets into its fade number and completes its arc. And that's where you get that S-curve from. I'm sure you've heard about the S-curve in disc golf. If I right-hand backhand throw and I match the speed on that disc and I've got a -1 turn, I should get a little bit of rightward movement before the disc ultimately fades back to the left. And in general, those fade numbers are higher than the turn numbers. That's not always the case, but in general, they are. And you'll see much more of a fade than you will a turn. Which brings us, of course, to fade. Fade is how hard that disc is going to cut when it runs out of energy. If you've got a 4 fade on there, that disc will slice down at a 45-degree angle hard and will often end up nowhere near the point where you want it to land, unless, like if you're a right-hand backhand thrower like me, you throw and put it to the right a little bit, hoping for that fade to bring it back center to the left. If I miscalculate my throw, which happens all the time, and I'm going straight at the basket, well, I'm going to fade well left of that basket on a 4 fade disc. The higher that number, the stronger the fade. Let's kick things off with speed. Again, speed is deceptive because it's not exactly the speed of the disc so much as the speed of the disc needed to make those other numbers come out. Now we're starting off with speed, and this is a Latitude 64 Halo with a 13 speed, 5 glide, -0.5 turn, and a 3 fade. Now, speed is the first number, and it indicates how fast the disc needs to be thrown to achieve its intended flight. Higher speed discs are generally for more experienced players with stronger throws. So remember, for the new disc golfers out there, it's important to keep it low on that speed number until you develop enough arm strength and the proper form to really throw these discs and work those other 3 numbers out of the disc. Now, turn is my personal favorite. If you like those big booming S-curves out there on a wide open throw, then you definitely need to know how to work the turn out of the disc. Now here's a prime example of turn. I'm using the Northman, which has a 10 speed, a 5 glide, and a -1 turn with a 2 fade. So I want to get that -1 turn out of it, so it should be, if thrown right, a slight S-curve. All right, so the turn is the 3rd number, and it describes the disc tendency to curve to the right for right-handed backhand throws during the initial part of the flight. Discs with more turn are useful for anhyzer shots or for players with slower arm speeds. Alright, now we'll jump into glide, which is a lot more complicated than you think. Now glide is the second number, and it's a measure of the disc's ability to stay in the air. Discs with higher glide are great for beginners and for achieving longer distances. But if you throw them high, the disc will really lose its juice, because that glide, once you get that disc way up in the air like that and it's hitting the air currents, that glide becomes more of your enemy than it does your friend. Now here's a primary example of glide within putting range. I'm using a classic Warren, which has a 2-speed, 4 glide, 0 turn, and a 0.5 fade. And I'm also using the Saki Bomb Slammer, which has a 3-speed, 1 glide, 0.5 turn, and 4 fade. Now the Saki Bomb is not something I would normally putt with, especially in this range, because as you can see, it dropped too low and it hit the basket. The classic Warden stayed up just long enough for me to skim over the top and hit the chains. Now both of these discs are fantastic for putting, but one definitely has a better purpose over the other when it comes to staying up in the air, and that is the Warden. If you want a laser, go with the Saki Bomb. Fade is my least favorite because it has a tendency to screw everything up. Even when I think I have the perfect throw, that fade number can cause a lot of chaos if you don't know how to use it. Now to see how fade works on the course, I chose a Lucid Verdict and a Dynamic Discs Justice. The Verdict has a 5-speed, 4 glide, 0 turn, and 3.5 fade. The Justice has a 5-speed, 1 glide, 0.5 turn, and a 4 fade. So these are both strong fading discs. They got a heavy fade on the back end. When they run out of juice, they're going to cut hard. Now I throw low with mid-ranges, so you don't see a huge example of this, but you can see that neither disc turns first. They both fade heavily. All right, now fade is the 4th number, and it indicates how much the disc will hook left at the end of the flight, right hand, backhand. Discs with higher fade are great for hyzer shots and for finishing strong against the wind. So there you have it. There are your 4 numbers: speed, glide, turn, and fade. Speed helps open up those other numbers if you can get the disc up to the speed that it's indicated on the number. Your glide is how well your disc stays aloft. It's affected by wind and air density, etc. Your turn and your fade, where you get the big S curves, or they determine whether or not the disc is understable or overstable or somewhere in the middle stable. With all of that put together, that's going to help you choose the right disc for you. And for new disc golfers out there, you're going to want to stick with a low speed, a relatively high glide. I'd say 5, no less than 4. There are some discs out there that have a 6 glide as well. You want to keep your turn low, and you want to keep your fade low. And when I say low on the turn, that means going into the negative numbers a little bit as well. You will discover as you progress that your numbers will change drastically depending on how fast your skills improve and how much speed you're able to get on those discs. With all of that being said, appreciate everybody checking out the channel today. If you got any comments or insights that you want to add as well, feel free to do so. As far as I'm concerned, this is a team effort. Once again, hit that like and subscribe, and we will see you out on the course.